The internet is an array of connected networks spanning the globe. Like neurons, these networks deliver information from location to location, creating a vast web of data. Data are the qualitative and quantitative values that create our sites, links, files, and everything online. From our side of the computer screen, we see this data as numbers and symbols. But if you follow the network strings to the other side of the screen, a new world waits to be seen. A digital world. Chapter 2. A World Set Ablaze. Tess fell slowly back from her crouched position to her hindquarters, and slack-jawed, she turned her head this way and that to study her surroundings. She tried pinching herself, closing and reopening her eyes, and holding her breath to see if this was all a dream, but the incredulous scenery remained. As she instinctively crawled around, her hand happened upon her phone. The screen was lit with the Digimon game. Her eyes would have widened if they hadn't already been in awe for the last few minutes. In the game, the result of her glitched pull from earlier that day was glowing. A triple S rarity, alternate skin, Angemon. Her gaze of disbelief turned to disappointment.
I already had that one,
Tess muttered to herself, utterly defeated. She wiped the last of the combination of tears and vomit from her face. She grabbed a tree branch to help get herself onto her feet, fumbled a few steps, then began to search for any kind of familiar sight. The unnaturally cool-colored forest was thick with foliage. Vines often blocked her path, and when she couldn't contort her way through, she doubled back to find a new route. Tess had never been a Girl Scout. She grew up in the city, and her only experiences with nature were the scant few times Penny successfully dragged her out to go on a leisurely hike, and one short-lived family camping trip when she was 12 that ended early because she cut her knee and needed stitches. Never mind that her father had also forgotten the tent. To call Tess a nature lady would have been a joke. Not a particularly good one, but her friends would have laughed. Even so, she was forced to navigate through this foreign landscape devoid of any man-made path. The only information Tess had to go off of were tips from the handful of survival shows she watched when she was younger. She remembered a detail about moss always pointing north, which would have been helpful if the geometric patterned moss she encountered wasn't fully wrapped around the surface of a boulder. Another tip she remembered was to drink urine in times of severe dehydration. Tess shuddered at that prospect and sped up her pace with a newfound drive of finding a water source. She continued on for what must have been miles, the base of her dress torn and tattered. All the while, the night grew darker, but to Tess's relief, not colder. It was challenging enough to make out any paths when she could see clearly, so with the rapidly fading light, Tess decided to delay her search and find a place to rest until morning. Maybe when she woke up, she'd find herself back home, safely in her bed. It was a fool's hope, but she wished nonetheless. In her artificial bliss of self-deception that all would be right in the morning, she explored the area for a safe place to bed down for the evening. Tess found a wide bush with umbrella-like pink-green leaves that seemed optimal for a makeshift mat. Normally, she would be cautious of the bright color, another unlocked survival memory, if nearly all of the foliage she had come across wasn't similarly vibrant. Tess started to pull and break the leaves away from the bush. In between the cracking and rustling, she thought she heard soft whimpering. Tess paused to listen intently. The sound continued. It seemed like the origin of the cry was about 20 yards past the bush. Tess set down the leaves and stealthily moved towards the sound. As she got closer, the cry became clearer and was reminiscent of a small child. Sweat was beating down Tess's forehead as she hid behind the thick trunk of a tree. The noise was directly behind her cover. She gulped. Hesitation gripped her for just a moment until it was overpowered by her curiosity. Slowly, Tess moved her head around the trunk so that only one eye peeked out. In a small clearing, no larger than her bedroom, sat a pale yellow, round creature with ears, each in the shape of 3 feathers, nearly the same size as its body. Tess squinted to make out the creature in the dark, then her eyes widened in recognition. She turned quickly back around the tree and pulled her phone out of her bag. After tapping the side buttons to make sure it was on silent, she opened the Digimon mobile game and brought up her Digibank. She scrolled and scrolled, nearly to the bottom of the gallery until she saw it.
There's no way,
she thought. Tess took another brief look around the tree for clarification, but there was no denying it. She hid again, nose in her phone.
It really is. That's Upamon.
Just as her brain began piecing together this new information, another voice came from the clearing in a mocking, distorted tone.
Aww, poor baby. Was it too much for you?
The unknown creature teased.
I just don't understand.
Upamon stuttered between tears.
How can you still not get it?
The unknown creature sounded unreasonably impatient and irritated. Tess's curiosity resurfaced over the identity of this new creature, hoping it would add proof to her working hypothesis. Holding her breath, she tilted her head to catch another glimpse. The second creature was flying in midair in front of Upamon. It was similarly round, but more loaf-shaped and orange. Its ears also seemed to be wings, or maybe they were just wings and not ears.
Is that Patamon?
Tess wondered, but a clear detail made her doubt that thought. This Patamon look-alike was outlined in a blackness darker than any shadow in the night forest, and moved like flames over its entire body.
It's painfully simple. You better listen this time.
The shadowed Patamon continued.
This world isn't worth it. It's bound to end, and nothing you do will ever change that.
Upamon's eyes welled up.
But don't take it personally. Nothing any of us Digimon could do would ever change that. We might as well give up and relinquish our data to the server.
Digimon.
Tess noted.
So that means I must be in the digital world.
With part of the mystery solved, she focused attentively on the unraveling scene in the clearing. Upamon overflowing with tears, and Patamon hovering threateningly above him.
It seems like you still don't get it.
Patamon's voice sounded twisted and almost demonic compared to the audio files on the Digimon mobile game.
Maybe you need my help to get it through your thick head!
Upamon gasped and huddled back, covering its eyes with its ears in preparation of Patamon's attack. Tess thought that she ought to do something, that she had to do something. Now. Not in a moment, but now. Unfortunately, her body was a little slow on the uptake. She crept from behind the tree and said,
Hey.
Less like an intimidation tactic and more like she was sheepishly approaching a crush. The enshadowed Patamon was in the middle of a deep breath. It briefly glanced toward Tess, then back to Upamon, unperturbed. Patamon reared back for its attack.
Boom!
Go, Cracker!
A voice thundered from out of the dark. Tess felt a presence speed past her. A loud metal clang resonated as Patamon was knocked out of the air and out of the clearing by the force of a headbutt. A new Digimon, unfamiliar to Tess, stood beside Upamon. They were about half the size of Tess, but larger than Upamon or Patamon. Their body was similar to a Stegosaurus dinosaur, but on the forehead, a metallic plate was attached with a half ring of metal spikes adorning the back. Its fierce eyes gleamed in the minimal light, and its body rose and fell with heavy, slow breaths. Tess couldn't move, unsure as to whether or not the Digimon would see her as another threat. The Digimon did not turn to her. Instead, it looked to Upamon, who had uncovered their eyes once they realized they were not at the receiving end of the clanging impact. The Stegosaurus-like Digimon hurried over to Upamon and got low on the ground next to it.
Are you okay?
The Digimon asked Upamon. The voice was a soft change from the battle cry they had yelled a mere moment ago, but even during the constellation, there was a feisty energy to it.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Cerasmon.
Upamon replied.
But who's that?
They both turned to face Tess, who stood motionless. Maybe their vision was based on movement.
Hey!
Cerasmon called to her, and before she could answer, Not that she had any intention of doing so, the dark Patamon struggled out of the forest brush and flapped wearily to fly.
What's the big idea?
Patamon yelled to the other Digimon.
I was in the middle of something!
Oh, were you?
Teased Cerasmon.
I hadn't noticed.
Patamon growled at her sarcastic tone. Cerasmon took a ready stance to strike again. The shadowed Patamon paused to scan the field, then relented.
Fine! You can act all heroic now, but like I said, it's pointless!
Cerasmon defiantly grinned against Patamon's nihilism. Upamon instinctually winced, then, inspired by Cerasmon, shrugged off the verbal attack.
You're all infuriating! See you never, heroes!
Patamon emphasized the word like a curse, then retreated into the forest. Cerasmon relaxed her stance, but remained proud, calling out a final
Coward!
to the defeated foe. She turned to face Tess again and started walking towards her. Cerasmon's brow ridges lowered, and her mouth crept into a slanted smile. Tess's legs must have cut off all communication with her head. She was wholly stuck. Cerasmon got right up to Tess, her dinosaur-like head in line with Tess's ribcage, then quickly flipped her expression. She tilted her head to the side with eyes closed, bore her sharp teeth in a grin, offered her claw hand out to shake, and said,
I'm Cerasmon! Thanks for the distraction back there.
Tess's knees unlocked and released the dam of anxious anticipation. She wobbled momentarily before regaining her balance, then shook Cerasmon's hand.
But I probably still could have done it on my own.
Cerasmon scratched her head in mild embarrassment for Tess and let out a half-laugh.
Nice to meet you.
Was about all Tess could muster in this fever dream of a situation, even after Cerasmon's slight jab at her meager attempt to stop Patamon.
Likewise. Just be careful next time. Wouldn't want you to get caught up in something you can't handle.
Cerasmon plainly pointed out. Her forwardness could have felt like an attack if not for the complete absence of hostility. Her tone was all matter-of-fact and an honest stream of thought. Tess felt oddly comforted.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not really sure what I was thinking.
Tess looked to the ground.
Hey,
Cerasmon spoke up and locked eyes with Tess. She had a loud voice but a kind smile.
don't be sorry. The past is the past. You'll figure it out next time. By the way,
Cerasmon eyed her shoulder bag.
you wouldn't happen to have any food, would you?
Food?
Tess asked, a little thrown by the change in topic. Then, heavy stomping shook the earth and abruptly cut off their conversation. Cerasmon whipped towards the direction of the sounds. They seemed to be coming from behind Upamon. Cerasmon shouted,
Run!
and Upamon fled through the clearing in the opposite direction while Tess's knees locked up again. The sounds of cracking wood and smashed dirt was deafening. Out from the thick cover of the forest, a beast at least twice the size of Tess bursted into the clearing. Its body was an anthropomorphic vortex of dark red fire with a metal helmet, elongated snout, and immense sharp claws.
Dark Lizardmon.
Tess noticed. The monster scanned the space. The helmet's eye sockets were deep in void. It stopped the pass when its hollows aligned with Tess.
Oh no.
The bravado that once filled Cerasmon's voice was gone.
I said run!
Tess finally gained control of her legs and began to move, stumbling against the scattered forest floor as she tried to reach full speed. Dark Lizardmon roared. The flames of its body spun in a vortex, then shot out in a beam towards Tess. A loud clang sounded. The fiery line veered off course and burned through the tree trunk adjacent to Tess. She paused and saw that Cerasmon had struck Dark Lizardmon to disrupt the attack. After they shared a nod, Tess continued to run. From behind her, she heard Cerasmon egging it on.
You really thought you could ignore me? Big mistake! School!
A booming hiss and clash followed by the cracking of numerous branches, and a final ear-shaking thud rang out. Tess slowed her pace and looked over her shoulder, then stopped. Cerasmon laid motionless at the base of an impacted tree some 50 feet from where she was just standing. Her body was covered in thick cuts, bruises, and scorch marks. Dark Lizardmon began to trudge towards Cerasmon, slowly but decidedly. Tess turned back to the thick forest. One word kept echoing in her head. Run. 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 So she did. She ran and ran and ran. Before she knew it, she was standing between Dark Lizardmon and the immobile body of Cerasmon. Move, Dark Lizardmon stated in a low hiss.
No.
Tess stammered, but as she spoke, the Digimon's tree-trunk-sized flame arm swatted her away like a mosquito. She felt the air evacuate her lungs. Her arm and side took the bulk of the blow, and she careened and tumbled across the forest floor. Her momentum ceased and her body slammed against the ground. A final sharp pain stung her back. Her vision was blurring, but through the haze she saw Dark Lizardmon ready another fiery blast at the unmoving Cerasmon.
Hey.
She mustered as her eyes began to shut. Tess gritted her teeth. She clenched her fist and shifted up against a boulder. She took deep, ragged breaths and opened her eyes wide with ferocity. Through tears of pain, she screamed.
Hey! I'm still here, asshole!
With a swift jerk of its head, Dark Lizardmon glared at her, and she stared right back, unwavering. A warm orange light stretched out from under where Tess had landed. She turned to see an enlarged, glowing egg decorated in flames with a curved blade jutting out from its shell. Blood along the edge. Her blood, she assumed. Another light with a similar warmth illuminated from her shoulder bag, which was laying at the feet of Dark Lizardmon. The lights grew to a near blinding brilliance. Then Cerasmon's body was encompassed in the same orange radiance. Her eyes opened. Cerasmon's form began to change. She grew to twice her original size. Her muscles became more pronounced. Her posture was more upright. Her tail was longer. The metal plate on her head now covered it almost entirely, save for her lower jaw, and had small openings around the back where her spiked horns used to be. On her chest, she wore a short leather jacket. On her hands, gloves, and on her legs, sleek metal greaves. The cocoon of light dispersed, and the colors of her new form were revealed. The yellow of her scaled hide, the black of her jacket and gloves, and the shining chrome of her helm and greaves. Her tail ignited, and from the small holes in her helm, flames jetted out, all in a hot blue blaze.
Incendimon!
Incendimon leapt into the air and roundhouse kicked Dark Lizardmon on the head, nearly knocking it clean off. The sound of the metal-on-metal impact reverberated like a cathedral bell. Dark Lizardmon was thrown from its feet, tearing through countless trees along the way. Incendimon faced the path of destruction and lined up with Dark Lizardmon, who was slowly returning to their feet. She took a standing sprint starting position. The flame on her tail jetted in a hot blue cone. Sharp lines of fire spewed from the holes in her helm. Smoke from the immense heat filled the space behind her. She smirked.
Burning bullet!
She flew more than she ran, head first towards Dark Lizardmon, then through it. When the wake of dust and smoke cleared, all that could be seen was the aftermath of the decisive blow. Dark Lizardmon's donut-hole corpse slowly disintegrated into motes of digital data. Incendimon stood over the defeated foe. She let out a heavy exhale of steam through gritted teeth and diminished back into her prior form of Cerasmon. She rushed over to Tess, finding her exactly where she was left, propped against a boulder, breathing heavily, and cradling her own arm. Tess looked at Cerasmon, who picked up the shoulder bag as she hurriedly approached.
Holy shit.
Tess said with a weighted breath, then smiled.
You're a badass.
It's not as badass as you!
Cerasmon sniffed, tears welling in her eyes.
Are you okay?
I think so. Other than my arm, which is definitely broken.
Tess winced as she tried readjusting herself.
In that case, let's see if we can get you somewhere safer. Once we do, I can go look for someone who can help with your arm.
Cerasmon proposed.
And after that, food. I'm starving.
Food sounds awesome.
Tess admitted.
All right, let's go.
Cerasmon supported most of her weight as she helped Tess to her feet. She put her hand around Tess's waist and felt a cold dampness on her clothes. When Cerasmon looked, she saw blood had soaked the back of her blouse. At the center, the fabric was cut, and on her back was a small but deep gash.
On second thought,
Tess muttered and collapsed on top of Cerasmon, who had just enough strength to catch her and set her down softly. Tess's eyes started to close.
Hey! No. Hey, stay with me, okay? Stay awake! Hey!
Cerasmon begged and pleaded, holding Tess's face. Tess's world turned dark.